Imagine a massive army, bright with new uniforms and hearts full of courage, marching out of Washington on a warm July day in 1861. They were heading towards a place called Manassas, with dreams of capturing Richmond and ending a war that had barely begun. This army, led by a determined General Irvin McDowell, was composed of 35,000 men, all inexperienced but eager to fight. Little did they know the challenges awaiting them at a small stream called Bull Run would etch their names into the annals of history. On a bright July day, the excitement was palpable as General McDowell's army set out with high spirits. Their mission was clear march to Richmond, seize it, and end the war swiftly. This grand plan, however, was fraught with the naivety of an untested army stepping into the harsh realities of war. Little did these men know the road to Richmond was paved with unexpected hardships. The weight of their equipment and the summer heat began to take its toll, setting the stage for the challenges they would face at a seemingly insignificant stream known as Bull Run. The strategic importance of their objective, capturing the railroad junction at Manassas, was crucial. By controlling this junction, the Union Army would cut off the Confederate capital from vital supplies and reinforcements. This move was intended to choke the rebels' resources and force a quick end to the conflict. As the Union soldiers left the familiarity of Washington behind, their boots stirred the dust of the road leading to Manassas. This path was not just a physical journey, but a march into the uncertain terrains of war. Every step took them closer to a confrontation for which they were ill-prepared. The journey was marked by songs of valor, but beneath the surface, anxiety simmered. Manassas, with its vital railroad junction where the Orange and Alexandria Railroad met the Manassas Gap Railroad, was critical. Seizing it would disrupt Confederate movements and give the Union a strategic advantage. Yet, as they marched, the Green troops were unaware of the seasoned Confederate forces gathering under Generals Beauregard and Johnston, ready to defend their ground fiercely. The stage was set for a clash that would test the mettle of McDowell's untried army. On July 18th, the Union Army encountered their first major resistance at Blackburn's Ford. It was here that General Daniel Tyler, under McDowell's command, first tested the Confederate defenses. The engagement was meant to be a reconnaissance in force, but it quickly escalated beyond expectations. Tyler's artillery opened the encounter, trying to gauge the strength of the Confederate position. In response, the Confederates, hidden by the thick brush along Bull Run, unleashed a fierce volley of musket fire. The battle intensified, revealing the Confederate force to be more formidable than anticipated. The Union troops, shaken by the enemy's resolve and their own lack of combat experience, struggled to maintain their ground. The skirmish at Blackburn's Ford served as a harsh introduction to war for McDowell's men, setting a somber tone for what was to come. Following the skirmish at Blackburn's Ford, General McDowell spent 2 days reevaluating his strategy. The resistance faced at the ford indicated that a direct assault might lead to heavy casualties. Hence, McDowell contemplated a flanking maneuver to outmaneuver the Confederate forces. In these crucial hours, Confederate leaders were not idle. General Beauregard, aware of the Union movements, strengthened his lines along Bull Run, preparing for the inevitable clash. His troops fortified positions, understanding that the battle to come would be pivotal. The preparation phase was tense, with both sides trying to second-guess the other's intentions. McDowell's decision to scout the Confederate left flank, however, would soon lead to one of the most significant battles of the Civil War. The dawn of July 21st marked the beginning of the Battle of Bull Run. McDowell's army moved towards the Confederate left flank, initiating their attack near Sudley Springs. It was here that the Union hoped to catch the Confederates off guard. The initial phase of the battle saw Union artillery pounding Confederate positions, attempting to soften their defenses. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of cannon fire echoed across the fields of Manassas. As the Union forces pushed forward, they encountered stiff resistance from Confederate troops who were well prepared and positioned. The battle lines wavered under intense exchanges of fire, setting the stage for a confrontation that would prove to be both bloody and chaotic. Alerted to the Union flanking maneuver, Confederate Colonel Nathan Evans quickly redirected his brigade to face the new threat. This swift tactical decision was crucial in preventing the Union forces from easily overrunning the Confederate left flank. Evans's men took up positions on Matthews Hill, where they would meet the advancing Union soldiers head-on. The Confederate response was a testament to their readiness and the effectiveness of their scouting and communication. As the Union troops ascended Matthews Hill, they were met with a hail of bullets. Evans' strategic maneuver had temporarily halted their advance, buying time for Confederate reinforcements to arrive. The battle for control of Bull Run was just beginning to unfold. The battle intensified on Matthews Hill as regiments from both sides engaged in close combat. The Union forces, led by Colonel Ambrose Burnside, pushed forward with determination, but the Confederates were equally resolute in their defense. Soldiers from New York, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire clashed with their counterparts from South Carolina, Louisiana, and Alabama. The hill echoed with the sounds of gunfire and the cries of the wounded. The struggle was fierce, and the outcome remained uncertain as both sides poured more troops into the fray. As the morning wore on, the Union forces began to gain the upper hand, driving the Confederates back towards Henry Hill. The battle was far from over, but the initial success on Matthews Hill gave the Union troops a glimmer of hope. With the Confederates reeling from the setbacks at Matthews Hill, the Union forces continued their advance towards Henry Hill. This position was crucial for control of the battlefield, and both sides knew that holding it could turn the tide of the battle. General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, recognizing the importance of Henry Hill, swiftly organized his Virginian brigades to form a defensive line. His presence and command inspired his troops, who prepared to hold their ground against the advancing Union forces. The battle for Henry Hill was marked by brutal fighting. Jackson's men, standing firm like a stone wall, repelled repeated Union assaults. The resolve of the Confederates under Jackson's command would make this part of the battle one of the most memorable of the Civil War. As the infantry battled for Henry Hill, an intense artillery duel unfolded. The Union batteries, commanded by Captains James Ricketts and Charles Griffin, moved their guns forward to support the infantry assault. However, they soon found themselves targeted by Confederate artillery. The exchange was fierce, with cannonballs tearing through the air and causing devastation on both sides. The artillerymen worked feverishly under the summer sun, loading and firing as quickly as they could. Despite their efforts, the Union artillery was challenged by the accurate fire of Confederate guns. The duel was not only a test of skill but also of endurance, as both sides sought to silence the other's guns and gain an advantage. While the cannons roared, the infantry on both sides engaged in close combat. The Union troops, bolstered by reinforcements, launched several determined attacks on the Confederate positions. The fighting was intense, with regiments from both armies entangled in a deadly dance of advance and retreat. The battlefield was chaotic, filled with the sounds of muskets, the shouts of officers, and the groans of the wounded. Despite their efforts, the Union forces found it difficult to break the Confederate lines. The Southern troops, well entrenched and fighting on familiar terrain, resisted fiercely, determined to hold their ground against the invaders. The toll of the battle was heavy, with casualties mounting on both sides. The fields of Bull Run were strewn with the fallen, a grim testament to the ferocity of the fighting. Among the chaos, acts of bravery shone brightly. 2 soldiers from the 12th New York, Corporal James E. Cross and Private Charles F. Rand, distinguished themselves by their courageous actions. For their gallantry, they would later be awarded the Medal of Honor. As the day wore on, the cost of the battle became increasingly apparent. Both armies suffered greatly, but the courage displayed by individuals on both sides underscored the human capacity for heroism in the face of adversity. In the aftermath of the battle, General McDowell faced criticism for his handling of the campaign. The high expectations at the outset were tempered by the reality of the Union's defeat, and questions were raised about his strategic decisions. McDowell's plan had been ambitious, but the execution was flawed. The inexperience of his troops and the logistical challenges had undermined the Union's efforts. The battle revealed the harsh realities of war and the need for better preparation and leadership. Despite the setback, the battle provided valuable lessons. McDowell and his commanders analyzed what had gone wrong and began planning for future engagements, determined to overcome the deficiencies that had led to their defeat at Bull Run.